Hello, welcome back to the channel. This week I'm going to continue getting into the sniper install, and I'm running into some issues that some other folks have had with voltage. I'll get into the details of that as we go into it. And then over the Easter break, I wanted to see my folks in upstate New York and stopped in at a yard up there to look through some other trucks and try to get some parts. And I'll go into some details there too. So let's get started. So here's a shot of all 8 cylinders in the engine. Right now I'm checking everything to see if there's any water in the cylinders. There was water in the gas tank when I dropped it and drained it, and I was really worried that I might have hydrolocked the engine. So I put a borescope down each of the cylinders to check and see. I didn't see anything other than, bad carbonization on the pistons themselves. Everything looked dry. So I decided to go ahead and calibrate and go through the startup procedure for the sniper kit. Good news, I've got a fitting that works in the front of the carburetor. It clears the water neck right here. So next up, I'm going to flush out the fuel system. I've got to go and get fuel, flush out the fuel system, and then I'll hook this thing up. Before I did anything else with the sniper, I switched out the battery cable. This black one is the old one, and this red one is the new one. You can see the difference in the size there. I just figured I would try to eliminate any of the possible obstacles to getting this thing running well that I could. So that's done. I'm going to see if this makes a difference with the starter itself. The starter itself sounds kind of funky. I'm trying to avoid having to actually change it out because it's in a really crappy position on this truck. It's right inside the frame rail there, and in between there and the engine. It's just in a really crappy spot, and then it's directly above the axle, so it's like where it would be a hard but not a super difficult job to do in the Scout, it would be really hard to do in this truck. So I'm trying to avoid it until I can get it up on a lift somewhere. It's Saturday afternoon, and I am struggling to get all the stuff together to get the sniper kit installed and get it started for the first time. The tank has got about 5 gallons of gas in it. I've just replaced the battery cable, the positive battery cable, and I think I've got everything buttoned up. So I'm gonna set some cameras up now and go through the initial setup checks on the sniper, flush out some gas, tell the sniper what kind of engine it is and all that kind of stuff, and then go from there. The first job was to set up a catch can in the engine bay for gasoline. Basically, you're flushing the lines out and making sure that fuel is going all the way through the system. So you got to have something in the engine bay to catch that stuff before you hook the entire system up to the carburetor. Then I powered up the sniper head unit and started programming in all of the different engine specs so that the system knew what it was going to be controlling. Next. 8 cylinders. Next. This is a first generation sniper unit, and I found that the touchscreen is a bit twitchy. It's not as refined as an iPhone, even a first generation iPhone. It's a small screen, and my big fat fingers made it really hard to be precise. .345. Next. Target idle speed. We go 650. This control panel's a little jumpy. Next, it's a mild cam. Going to be using a coil. All right, I heard the fuel pump. And we got gas. Let's do that a couple more times. Okay. Nice. Got gas. Monitors.
Like initial startup.
Initial startup. All right. Engine RPM is stall. TPS is 0. Map is 100. CTS is 74 Fahrenheit. Battery.
This will bring up a screen showing all the sensor readings. Engine RPM should be at stall since we're not running. Throttle position sensor should be at 0. If you slowly compress the throttle to wide open throttle,
Nice.
you get a reading between 85 and 100%.
Okay.
If your reading is lower than 85%, you'll need to correct any issue preventing the full travel of your throttle linkage before proceeding. Your map sensor should read between 95 and 102 kPa. Higher elevations can cause the reading to be as low as 75 kPa. The coolant temp sensor should read the ambient temperature of the air around your engine. Ours is 81 to 82 degrees. The IAC, we will have to address this after the engine is warmed up. If any of the sensors are not reading correctly, you must resolve the issue before the engine is started. While you still have your handheld on the initial startup screen, go ahead and crank the engine, but watch the RPMs. It should say syncing, and the engine should start up.
Here we go.
No RPM signal. You either have an error in the wiring or the system setup.
Okay. So I don't have.
If the engine starts in the end part of, you must resolve the issue before the engine is started. While you still have your handheld on the initial startup screen, go ahead and crank the engine, but watch the RPMs. It should say syncing, and the engine should start up.
Yep.
If there's no RPM signal,
So I've got this hooked up wrong somehow, because what's happening is when I crank it, this is turning off. And I don't know why that is. I'm trying to be smart about this. I'm trying to take my time, not jump the gun and go too far ahead and do something stupid. So here's where I'm at. I went in the garage, I cleaned up a little bit, tried to clear my head. Did a little bit of reading online. There were a couple of people who were asking about power cutting out in their Sniper when they turn the key on. And it seemed that the solution to their problem was power at the switch, at the key. Mine is brand new, so I'm pretty sure it's not that. What I'm doing in the fuse panel is I've got two different leads coming off of the heater circuit. One is for the auxiliary fuse panel because it's switched power, and the other one was this pink wire that I just ran. So I'm going to try it taking off the auxiliary panel, basically disconnecting that. So the only thing jumping to the heater circuit is the pink wire for the sniper. I've also had the battery tender on, cooking the battery up a little bit, figuring, anything can help at this point. So I'm going to try that, and I'm going to see if that works. Let's give it a shot. Nope. Here's what happens. The frustrating thing is that the engine almost caught just a minute ago. You see that? My sender's working. That's good news. That sounds horrible. Wow. Well, I guess the horn button works. This horn is in rough shape. I might swap that out and see if I know I have other horns that came from the green truck. Maybe I'll throw one in here just for shits and giggles. I've got a couple of things I need to follow up on with the install here. First is I've got the PCV valve in back here, and I've got to remember and figure out where that's supposed to go, because that's supposed to hook up to something. I've also got this valve here, this outlet here, which leads to a capped off vacuum hose. This might be for the vacuum advance, but I don't know. The vacuum advance is not hooked up to anything. That's the way it came, so I've got to figure that out. What else is there? I just checked all the cylinders, and all the cylinders look dry. There was no water in any of them, like not any pooled water or anything, which is great. I've got to figure out what to do with these harnesses, if I can find a cap or something to put on top of these, just so they don't get ruined when the truck is actually, if the truck actually ever runs. And then I've got to figure out what to do with this harness, try to get this up off of the engine and clean it up and everything. It's just sort of sitting here. I'm going to sit back and have a think on this, because I don't want to blow anything up. I want to be very, very, very careful with what I'm doing here. Very deliberate, and make sure that I do this right. So I'm probably going to button this up for the evening. It's about 5:30. I've got to get some dinner, so I'm just going to let it sit on the tender. This might be the last update on this until after Easter, because I'm headed out of town. Hopefully I'll be able to get some parts in a yard up there. I'm going to be looking for a new washer unit and some other things, so I'll try to keep you updated on that as I go. I don't know if I mentioned this in previous videos, but I revised the design of the toolbox in the truck here to hide the locking mechanism. So I took out the thing here and the thing in the back, and now it's locked on the inside. So basically, it looks like it could pick up and walk away, but it can't, which is really nice. So this is where I keep all of my spares and tools and stuff when I'm on the road. Happy with the way that turned out. This is the lock barrel from the 67 truck. The back of this thing is a bit different than the one that I've got. I'm going to pull this apart in a minute after I've identified all of these connections and see what's what here. But the interesting thing is that this whole section is one connector. It's one big, what is that, six prong connector. Now that I look at this, it doesn't look any different from the one that I've got on the truck. All I've got to do now is basically just mark out what this is, and what this is. And I should be able to just take this inside and figure out if this matches up with the one that I've got. At this point, I think I should be going to locksmith school or something. So here are the two lock barrels I've got. This is the one from the 67, and you can see there's actually, the key is broken off in the lock, which I thought was interesting. I hadn't noticed that. And then this is the one that I got from the wire harness that I got from Scout Connection. This just came on there. I've got a note on here that says replacement, from replacement harness. They told me it wasn't tested. So the way these work is, this is the lock barrel here, or the lock cylinder, and you can see there's a brass ring on the back of it here. I don't know if this camera's going to get it or not, but this brass ring is on a spring, and it basically goes up and down, and this is the lock ring on the back of the actual lock itself. What you have to do is stick a rod into this little hole and basically depress that lock ring down so that the whole piece will slide out. I've actually got this one started. You can see here I've got an Allen key in there. It's started, and I've already pulled this one out. So this lock barrel will pull right out. And then I can use this one and plop that one back in its place. What I've got to do now is I've got to test both of these somehow to see if they're going to work. I'm going to clean them both up and look up how to test these things for continuity and figure out what I've got to do to basically make this work. But knowing that I've got two of these, I mean, I can always go out and buy a third one. I thought I had the one from the 63, but I can't find it anywhere. Strangely, it's nowhere to be found. I'm going to see if I can test these two, clean them up, pull this one out, and then see what the deal is with the continuity. And then if I've got to buy a new one, I want to say it was probably only like 20 bucks or something, but I'll test these first and see what I can do. All right, that's battery. All right, so that should be off. Okay, that's accessory. This should be ignition. All right. So let's do this. Here we go. All right, so I want to put this one aside. Put the lock barrel in this one. So you want to feed it in where this pin goes in the slot at the bottom there. Should be pretty easy. Done. There's accessory. That's off. Oh, wait a minute. This one's a bit stiffer than the other one, which is interesting. Okay. That's accessory. That's off. That's run. And that's start. We'll do the same thing again here. It's my battery lead. Let's start with accessory first. Do this without bending my test leads. All right, so that's accessory. I've got to work on the, I got to clean these contacts up a bit more, I think, because it's not, yeah, there we go. When I've got the full blade on here, that's better. Okay. So take that off. Now I'm going to do the ignition side. So I'll go to, I'm on off right now. I'll go to start, and that's ignition. This barrel actually works a little bit better than the other one does, which is interesting. I need to get some contact cleaner and clean this up. And then I think what I might do is I might swap this one in for the new lock set that's in the truck right now. Because again, with this in here, this is the same key. I've got key to the door. This will work on all of the locks in the truck now. The doors, the rear door, the barn door itself, and the ignition. And that's really, that's the goal here, is to have all the locks keyed to the same lock. All right, so knowing that, at least knowing that this works, I need to get some electrical cleaner, clean this up, and then carefully swap this out for the lock set that's in the truck right now, and then test it out and see if it works. Over Easter, I visited my family in upstate New York, and while I was there, I made arrangements to visit a junkyard I'd first checked out in November of last year. I was after two things: a manual steering column from a manual shift truck and a decent wiper motor. This yard had several internationals, and I figured I might be able to find at least one of them. This green truck was my best candidate, and I did have the column I wanted, but he wanted to keep it complete, so I had to walk away.
Oh, wow.
While we were there, we walked the rest of the yard and checked out the stuff I hadn't seen last year. There were several Scouts. This one had seen many better days, but probably still has some good parts to offer. It's been a while since I've seen a tailgate just sort of fall off the truck. It was a pretty bare bones model, and there wasn't much on the inside. This Scout 2 was one of the worst I've seen in a while, but everything in front of the windshield looked like it was in decent shape. I actually didn't recognize it at first because I was seeing it from the back when we first walked up on it. My sister actually pointed it out to me. I crawled up on top of it and took a look around. There's a couple of small things that might be worth something, but overall, not much here. Then there was this Terra, which was the most complete of all the Scouts he had in the lot. For a New York truck, this thing is show quality, but for down here, it's clearly got some issues. It was interesting too. It was yellow with a blue plaid interior, which was something I hadn't seen in a long time. Most of the stuff on this side, he wasn't interested in parting out. I'm sure somebody would get a lot of money for those sliding Terra windows, for example, and maybe the tailgate and some other things. But the sheet metal on this was pretty far gone. The tub looked like it was in pretty rough shape. This was the only part I wound up pulling out of the entire yard. This was the other tailgate from the green truck that I looked at last fall. It's in pretty decent shape, and I'm pretty happy with that. And they should clean up pretty well, I think. So that's going to do it for this week. As always, thanks for watching. I'll put a link up here for merch. Anything you buy there goes to help support the channel, so I really appreciate it. And I'll see you in a week or two.